Hey, and welcome back to Cracking the Cryptic, where today we're going to take a look at a puzzle that's been suggested by email to us. You can see it looks like a normal Sudoku, but it isn't quite a normal Sudoku. So I'm going to explain the rules in a moment, but thanks very much for the recommendation. I hope it'll be a good puzzle. It's by Serkan Yurekli, who is one of the very best puzzle solvers in the world. It comes from the World Sudoku Grand Prix in 2013. Now, the rules of this puzzle are, it's called top-heavy Sudoku. And what that means is that in each 3x3 box, in each row and each column, you actually only need to place 6 numbers. We need to place the numbers 1 to 6. So there's going to be 3 blank squares in every row, column and box. And there's an additional rule which is whenever 2 numbers are vertically adjacent to one another, i.e. this cell and this cell, for example, the top number must be bigger. And believe it or not, it's possible to solve this Sudoku. Well, I hope it's possible. I haven't tried it yet. But it's going to be possible to solve this Sudoku just knowing that fact. Now, if you want to have a go yourself before you watch me, then do click on the link under the video, and that will take you to our software, and you'll be able to use exactly the same interface that I'm using to try and solve it. So now, I haven't done many top-heavy Sudokus before, but one of the things that I recommend is that you find a method of notation of noting down squares that cannot contain digits, because they almost form, a separate puzzle in themselves. So how can we think about that? For example, any square that's above a 6 cannot contain a digit, because obviously if we do put a digit in, it will be lower than 6. That will break the rules of the puzzle. So I'm going to use 8 to indicate where a number cannot be a digit. Now we can also obviously put 8s below all the 1s in the grid. Just one other thing to mention, by the way, this has come up on a few of the exotic variations that we've solved on the channel recently using the software. If you click the check button doesn't work on these variations, because what the check button is doing is it's looking at every row, every column and every box, and it's checking that the numbers 1 to 9 appear and there's no repeats. So for example, if I'm using this notation where there's hopefully going to be 3 8s in every box, column and row, it's just going to say you've got the puzzle wrong. So you might have to use the video to confirm whether or not your solution is correct. In due course, once the website appears, we're going to obviously have the ability to check puzzles exactly. So that's something that's coming, but it's not there yet. So anyway, we put some 8s in. I think I put all the naturally given 8s. So now it's just going to be a case of trying to spot things. Now let's have a quick look and see if we can spot anything quick. 4s, look, we've got 4, 4 and 4 here, so that square there, by normal Sudoku rules, is a 4. Here's our first use of the rule. These 4s mean there's a 4 either here or here. Well, if we put the 4 here, it's directly, vertically above a 5, and that would breach the condition. We must be top heavy, so the 4 must go there. Okay. 1, look, must be in one of these 3 squares. And therefore there must be a 1 in one of these 3 squares, and we have a 1 in those 2 positions. So that square must be a 1. And here's another trick we can do. Look, 5 and 6 in column 4. Well, they operate very powerfully on this box, because we could never have a 5 or a 6 below a 3 and a 4. So the 5 and 6 are actually forced to be in those 2 positions. And we have 5 and 6 in column 7 already. So there's a 5-6 pair now in this box. And we still need to place a 3 in this box. Now how can we do that now? This can't be a 3 because of the 3 here, and we can never put a 3 here because this is going to be a 5 or a 6, and that would make us top light rather than top heavy, so the 3 must go there. and the other two squares must be 8s, because we've filled in all the digits now. Let's take a look actually at this column. We still need to place a 1 in this column. Well, the 1 can't go there because it'll be above a 5, so that's a 1. And this must be an 8. And we need another, we still need a 5 and a 6 in row 5, so it can't be here. It can never be here because it's got a 4 above it. So this must be a 5 or a 6. And this must be an 8. Like so. This can never be 1, obviously, because of the 1 here. So there's a 1 in one of these squares. Therefore, this square must be an 8. And we've got 2 8s down here. So I'm going to just let me pencil mark this in. 1 8, 1 8, 1 8. Now, yeah, okay, so now where can we put a 2 in this box? This 2 here means we are looking at one of these two cells. Obviously, with a 5 or 6 here, this can never be a 2. So that is a 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we still have a 5 and a 6 cell, and which can never be here, so this must be an 8. And we can never put a 5 and a 6 below a 1, so this must be 5 or 6, and this must be an 8. And you can see we're sort of slowly building up to, you know, a pattern of 8s in the grid, and that, well, I'm not sure it'll be important, but it often is with this particular Sudoku variant. So now let's have a look up here. We still need to place 3, 5 and 6. Well, that square can never be anything. This square here can't be a 3, 5 or a 6, so this must be an 8. Now this square can't be a 5. We've got 3 8s now in column 3, so we've got all our 8s. So we know every open digit here, every cell, sorry, every open cell is a real digit. And we're looking to place 3, 5 and 6, and we have a 5 here. So that's 3 or 6. It can be either. There's just a 2 below it. Now this, well, this can't be 6, because if this is 6, that will be a 5, and that will break. So it could be 3 or 5. Okay. Hang on, 6s here. 2 6s in these two positions. So there's a 6 in one of these two cells. Well, can't put a 6 here, or it'll be below a 3. So that's a 6. That means there's a 6 in one of these two cells, up in box 1. So I'm going to notate that using Snyder notation. So in the corner of boxes, I'm indicating relative positions in 3 by 3 boxes. Central notation, I'm saying that the contents of the cell itself can only be 3 or 6. So 6 is in one of these two squares. So it's not actually as useful as I was hoping, I don't think. Okay, well, where should we look next? Let's have a quick look down column 4. So in column 4 we need 1, 3 and 4. So this is not actually brilliant, is it? This could be 1, 3 or 8. So ones here. We can pencil mark some 1s into this box. This 3 is interesting because this can't be a 3. So actually there's a 3 in one of two positions in this box. Still don't know where the 3s are along here, so that's no use. Right. Ah, fives. Staring me in the face. 2 5s here. That's a 5. Okay. Ah, now this is, I suppose this is interesting. If we look at this square, what can this square be? Well, we already have a 6 in the column. So there is no valid number for this cell. This is an 8. And that gives us 3 8s in the box. So now this is obviously 3, 4, and 6 up here. So 4, 6, 3, 6. Hang on, is that right? No, 3, 4. 3, 4, 6. So I need a 1 to complete row 1 here. Now this square has a 1. There's already a 1 in this column, so that's an 8. And as usual, it is so important to trying to keep track of the 8s. Let's have a look down this column now. We need 3 and 4. So this square, there's a 4 here. This square could obviously still be 8, but it can only be a 3 or an 8. This square, there's a 3 there, so that can only be 4 or an 8. And one thing I'm going to recommend is, you can see if we look down column 2 here, there is definitely an 8 in one of these two positions. It's not possible this is 3 and 4, because that's going to break this cell. So I'm going to find some way of notating this, just to keep track of where I need 8s. So where I highlight cells in green, I'm going to say that that means that there's an 8 in one of the two cells. Now it might prove to be over the top, but that's what I'm going to do. So where should we look next? This square. Let's just do some highlighting here. So 4 in this column here. So this could be a 3 or a 6. We've got 3, so we can pencil mark 3s in there. 6s, we know, are one of 4 positions. 2 8s. But look, we can do a little trick here. I'm not sure. Well, it gets us another 8. If this, well, no, it doesn't get us another 8. It shows there's not another 8. If this square is an 8, look at what happens in the box. This becomes a 3. This becomes a 2. This becomes a 1, and we've got 3 8s in the box. So I have to put something in this square, a 6 actually, and that's going to be below a 1. So this is not an 8, therefore this is a digit, and it can only be a 3 or a 6. Ooh, here's nice. This is nice logic. Look at this. 2 8s here in row 3. So let's look at these two squares, which are above a 5 6 pair. Can these two squares both contain, well, they clearly can't both contain an 8, because that would give 4 8s in the row. So there is, well, and it should be pretty obvious, there can't be, you couldn't put a 5 and a 6 into these squares, because what will happen is that there will end up being a 5 above a 6. So these two squares actually are a 6 8 pair. That is the only possibility for these two squares. One of them is going to be a 6, because we can't have 2 8s. We have to put a number in one of these two squares, and the number has to be bigger than the number below it, and it can't be the same number, obviously. So one of these numbers has to be a 6, one of them has to be an 8. Now that gives us 3 8s now in row 3. that means this square and this square and this square all have to be digits. So we're looking to place 1, 2 and 3. This is a 1 or a 3. This is a 1 or a 2. It can't be a 3 because of the 3's there. And this must be a 2 or a 3. 2, 3. Now, is that useful? So I'm not sure. Maybe. Wow. Sorry about this. This square is more restricted than it first appears, because if we look down the column we need to place 2, 4, 5 and 6. Well, there's a 6 here, so this can be 2, 4 or 5, but it can't be 4 or 5 because of the 3 that's above it. So this is a 2 or an 8. Two, 3, 5. Well, this can't be 2 or 3 because there's a 4 below it. So this is a... that's interesting. There's a 6 here, so that square is restricted as well. That's a 5 or an 8. And I guess by the same logic, but sort of inverted, this square will be restricted. So what can this square be? It can be 2, 3, 5, 6, but there's a 6 here and a 3 here. And this can't be a 5 because it's below a 4. So this is a 2 or an 8. And you can see, looking down the column, there must be an 8 in one of these two squares. So I can highlight that in green. So there's exactly 1 8 in these 3 squares as well. And exactly 1 8 in these 2 squares. Let's highlight that. Oh, I thought I was highlighting. Yeah, okay. Exactly 1 8 in these 2 squares. Right. Ooh. Here's a trick. Here is a trick. Let's look at these 3 squares. We know that we have to, well, one way of thinking about this is to think about how many 8s are in these 3 squares. So the maximum number of 8s would be 2. If there were 2 8s, what happens? And we have a problem. If there are 2 8s in these 3 squares, we know that this square and this square and this square, obviously, and this square are all digits. So this would have to be a 5. So what are the options for this square? Well, if we look at the box, the only numbers unplaced would be 2 or 3. So if this has to be a 2 or a 3, that just doesn't work. If it's a 2, our pencil marking indicates this will be a 3, so it will be top light rather than top heavy. And if it's a 3, we can't fill this square. So there are not 2 8s in these 3 squares. Now, is it possible there are no 8s? No, ha ha ha! No, it's not possible there are no 8s, and this is for a different reason. We know there is a 1 in one of these 3 squares. So if there are no 8s in these 3 squares, there are digits in these 3 squares, but one of these cells is below a 1, and that will break. So there is, in fact, there is exactly 1 8 in these 3 squares. Now I'm saying this like this is in some way useful, but, and it might be, because this is, I mean, there's probably a million ways of doing this, and you're probably all shouting at your screens because you've found a better way, but let me persevere with this. Let's look at these 2 squares. Now, what happens if there's no 8 in these 2 squares? We have the same problem, don't we? Because if there is not an 8 in one of these 2 squares, this will be a 5, and this square is broken again, because it can only be a 2 or a 3. 3 breaks that square, 2 forces a 3 into that position and breaks this square. So there is definitely an 8 in one of these 2 positions. So actually it's almost better for me to indicate that like this. So now we've got our 8s in row 7, and therefore this square is not an 8. That square is a 2. Now, does that matter? Well, I can see this 2 here has an effect on this box. This can't be a 2 anymore, obviously, or it could never have been 2 because it's above a 3. So, but now that means there is a 2 in one of those 2 squares. And there is 1 8 in these 3 squares. Okay, well, can't we do 8 in one of these 2 squares? So if this is an 8, these 2 squares must be digits. And we need to put a 2 into one of those digits because we have a 2 here. Now, because there's already a 1 in the box, the 2 will have to be here. So if this is an 8, this is a 2. And if this is not an 8, it's a 2. So there is actually a 2 in one of these 2 squares, which means this is not a 2, this is a 2. Now, so now one of these 2 squares must be an 8. Now sorry, this is taking a long time, but this is not easy. Actually, what are the options for this square? So this square is now below a 2, and it can't be a 1. So that square's broken. That square must be an 8. It can't be anything else. And we know there's an 8 in one of the grey squares, so this square must be a digit, and it can be it can only be 5. This square is a 5. And now, all of a sudden, we are maybe on the homeward straight, because now we're busted into this area. So that's a 5. Now that's a 6. That means this is a 6 and this is an 8. So we've now got, well, what do we need to put in this? We've got 1. We haven't got 1, sorry. We've got 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. So we need 1 and 8. Oh, that can't be a 1 there. That's an 8. Oh, this can't be a 1 here because it's above a 5. So that's a 1 and that's an 8. And that's brilliant, because now we actually, well, we know these are 2 8s because we need 2 8s to finish the box. So we've now got 2 8s here. These 2 are digits and they are 1 and 4. So let's put that in. This row looks quite restricted now, doesn't it? So, well, in fact, there's a few things I can see. But let's look at this row. So we need to put a 3 into this row, and there's a 3 there. So this square is an 8. 1, 2, we've got 2 8s now. But look, in this box, we highlighted one of these 2 squares as having to contain an 8. We've got 2 other 8s, so this square is a digit. 1, 2, 3. So this is a 4 or a 5. Well, that's probably resolvable. I'm not quite seeing how. Probably being done. But we can never put a digit above 6, so this square is an 8. That gives us 3 8s in this box, so now the other 3 squares must be digits, and we're looking to place 1, 3 and 4. So this square must be a 3 or a 4. This square must be a 1 or a 4, I think. But it can't be a 4 because we've got 4 in one of these 3 squares. That square's a 1. Therefore that's 3, that's 4. Now we are able to, I think, resolve this box, because now this can't be a 1. 1, 2 and 3 are forced. This can't be a 6, so the 6 is there. This is an 8. This is a 6 and a 5. This is a 5 and a 6. That means we do finally get this triple sorted. That's a 5 down there now. The only place for a 5 in this box is this square, because of 5, 5 and this 5 there. So that's a 5. This is an 8, so it can't be a 2 anymore. We've now got 3 8s along this bottom row. So this is a 4, and this is an 8. This is a 3, therefore this is a 3. I still need to put a 2 in this box, so it must go here. That means this is an 8, and finally 1 and 4. What a puzzle that is. That was much harder than I was expecting. I do hope you guys had a go at it. Oh my god, 27 minutes on the clock. I hope you guys had a go at it. I hope you didn't fail quite as badly as me. Let us know in the comments what you thought of this puzzle, and we'll be back soon with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.